All right, Nick, let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. I think the big question this offseason is Geno Smith. His, duration left with this team. How long is he going to be around? Will he be around this year? I think they're working towards a good goal, but there's an interesting bit of information came up this combine period. It makes you wonder what exactly the Seahawks plan is at quarterback. We'll get into that just in a second, but before we do, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. Nick, as I alluded to, combine season, there's always a lot of interesting information, maybe smoke screens. You never know what it is, but a lot of stuff flying around at the combine. Let's jump into this latest tweet on X and we'll talk more about it on the other side. This, of course, is from at Greg Bell, G Bell Seattle. It says NFL Combine in Indy, Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart says he's met with the hashtag Seahawks, also with QB needy Steelers and Raiders. Says for the Seahawks, it's been great to build a relationship with them, Dart says. Coach Mike McDonald said they're looking at possibly drafting a quarterback. Now, this is an interesting update. They've been talking about Geno Smith. Is he the guy saying, you've heard people say as much, but looking at a quarterback, what does this mean for the team? I think there's a lot to take away from this one, Nick. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, but before we get to you, Seahawks fans, in the comment section below, talk about the possibility here of drafting a quarterback. What do you think about that move? Do you think it's good? If you draft a quarterback, do you like Jackson Dart? Is there another quarterback you're looking at? I think there's a lot of takeaway from this. So let us know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this latest news out of Seattle?
Well, it's important to understand the entire context, right? And obviously, the Seahawks, like every single team, they're meeting with a bunch of different players at the combine. What's interesting with this is that, at least as of this morning, as we're recording this, the Seahawks have only met with one quarterback, and that's Jackson Dart. They've met with multiple tight ends. They've literally met with like 15 offensive linemen. They've met with wide receivers. They met with a bunch of DBs. They've only met with one quarterback, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they are going to pick Jackson Dart, but it means that they're looking for their guy and they think there's a chance that Dart may be worthwhile as their guy going forward. He's obviously not going to go top 5, top 10. Most people think he'll be gone late in the third round. He actually had a really good combine. He could slide up into round 2, but that's obviously going to take some time to shake out all the particulars there. But the point is, there's a lot of ways the Seattle Seahawks could be treating this. Right now, of course, there are reports and rumors, negotiation of a Geno Smith extension. If you look at his numbers, I'm going to pull it up here on overthecap.com. Upcoming season, his cap number is $44.5 million. That's the last year of his current deal. Over the cap has him valued at about $36 million. So right now, the Seahawks are paying him about 9 to 10 millions more than what he's worth based on the numbers. So they probably want to restructure that. They probably want to extend him as well in a deal that makes sense for the Seattle Seahawks from a salary cap perspective. And of course, this could be a negotiating ploy, right? Because right now we know Sam Howell, he's an expensive backup, but he's no threat to be the starter. So maybe if you draft or at least consider, and I'm very public about drafting a young quarterback, maybe that's a negotiating chip to say, hey, Geno, like, you want to come to a more team-friendly deal? Because if you get yourself too expensive, we're liable to let you go in a year or two and roll our dice with a young guy who's $40 million cheaper. So there could be a little bit of negotiation, could be a little gamesmanship going on there. Although I will say this, one of the reasons you bring in Geno Smith, one of the reasons you sign him to a deal and extend him is because you're trying to create the situation that we saw with the Kansas City Chiefs about a decade ago, where they had their coach, Andy Reid. They had a veteran, good but not great quarterback, Alex Smith, and they kept waiting for the opportunity to draft and find their guy, and eventually got it in Patrick Mahomes. And of course, the rest is history. The reason you stick with Geno Smith is because you're trying to follow that model, right? We know Geno Smith, he is a B quarterback. That's good. He'll take you to winning seasons. He'll take you to the playoffs. He's not going to win you a championship unless everything aligns perfectly. You need to get that elite caliber guy. I don't know if Jackson Dart is. Honestly, if you look at the probabilities, he probably isn't that guy. But the reason you have Geno Smith is that way every year you can take a look at the quarterback class. And if there's one or two guys you really love, you go after him. And right now, that's the approach I believe the Seahawks are taking. They're saying, okay, of all the guys we could potentially take in this class, Jackson Dart has what we like to maybe be our franchise guy for the long term, our Patrick Mahomes going forward. I think that's what the Seahawks are doing here. Does it mean they pick Dart? No. But I do think right now they're taking the right approach, saying, listen, Geno Smith, he is our Alex Smith, but we need to find our Mahomes, and that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, Nick, and I think when you look at a guy like Jackson Dart, Like you said, the data doesn't show he is gonna come in and be an elite starting quarterback from day one. He's not gonna be your Jaden Daniels. He's not gonna be your Justin Herbert. He's not gonna be a guy to come in and just be ready to go. But there is some intrigue around him, so I think at least if the Seahawks are considering him, they should be, applauded as this guy is interesting. It's not going to be a day one pick, most likely, and there's some good qualities about him. You look at the last 4 seasons for Dart. I mean, he started 3 in the SEC. He did really good. And every single year he has gotten better, and he put back to back elite seasons at the college level. When you look at his PFF grades, 2021, 70.9, 2022, a 79.5, then 2023, a 91.2, and again in 2024, a 92.5. So he got better every year, put back to back seasons together. Really, really good statistically there. Then on top of that, I think he's got some great stats. He put up a bunch of numbers in college in the SEC, threw for over 4,000 yards last year, 29 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions, but he threw the ball a lot. So, it's not too big of a number on the interception side of things for how much they were throwing the ball around. So, Jackson Dart is intriguing. Got the legs, he's got the ability. There's a lot of potential there. Now, that's what you need. Like you said, if Geno Smith is your Alex Smith, I think guys like Jackson Dart are who you need to look for. The guys that are under the radar, have a lot of potential, are doing a lot of really good things at the college level that people might not be penciling in. Like Patrick Mahomes. He fell to, I believe, 10th in the draft when he got drafted. For a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you see him now and be like, oh, there's no way he wasn't number one overall and called the most generational talent we've ever seen in our entire lives. Well, he wasn't. And so that's why Jackson Dart is intriguing. So the Seahawks, kudos to them for looking for those kind of guys because they're not in the position. And this draft, quite frankly, isn't the kind of draft where you're going to find a player like that. No player in this draft is a generational, surefire, number one overall pick type of guy. Maybe Travis Hunter, but he's not a quarterback. So, I mean, that doesn't really help you out too much if you're Seattle Seahawks. But so I think this is good. I think it's interesting. And I think for the Seahawks, no matter where they take this, because there's a lot of ways. If you're trying to, get Geno Smith down on his contract numbers, good move. If you're actually considering getting a guy that you might bring in to put behind Geno for the future, also a good move. So I think no matter how this goes, this could be very, very good for Seattle. Nick, I'm curious though, your thoughts on one thing. When you look at the quarterbacks in this draft, to you, I know we just talked about what he did do good, but is Jackson Dart the right guy? Is there another quarterback in this draft that you would want Seattle to look at?
We talked about Quinn Ewers linking him to a few other teams. And one of the reasons I like these battle tested SEC quarterbacks, which both Dart and Ewers are, is that it's the closest thing to the National Football League. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful, as long as an SEC quarterbacks that flame out and don't do well. But I think there's an understanding that you're not going to be overwhelmed immediately with just the incredible amount of athleticism. And this is one of the issues sometimes with some of these smaller school or non-SEC quarterbacks, non-Big Ten quarterbacks too. You can throw the Big Ten in there. Where I'm like, are you ready to handle all of this that goes into it? Remember, even Patrick Mahomes had to sit a season, right? He came out of the Big 12 Texas Tech, which obviously is a big conference, but it's a challenging environment, right? One of the reasons I think Jaden Daniels did so well, if you look at the quarterback for Washington and Caleb Williams had some issues, both teams are flawed. Washington's a very flawed team. The Bears were obviously a very flawed team. The reason that Daniels did so much better, in my opinion, is that he was used to so much SEC defenses, elite NFL talent every single week. When Caleb Williams was playing at Southern Cal the last 2 seasons and he got to play, not bad mouthing Oregon State or San Jose State or Fresno State here, but it's a massive drop in overall talent and team speed when you're going up against those guys. So if you're going up against a murderer's rose gauntlet of Alabama, LSU, Texas, week in and week out, right? It's just a different level of talent you have to go through. And I think there's some more adjustment, and eventually it kind of wears you down. The NFL season is long. When I look at guys like Ewers and Jackson Dart, I see these are guys who are battle tested SEC guys. And I think a lot of the guys that have this kind of experience often become these potential draft steals, right? Dak Prescott, of course, is a very famous example. He was a fourth-round pick, came from Mississippi State out of the SEC. He's obviously been a long-term starter for the Dallas Cowboys. Heck, even Tom Brady battle-tested in the Big Ten, right? He, of course, fell to the 6th round. So there is a sort of history there. Now, if you look at Dart versus Ewers, I think Dart is more appealing to me personally, just because he has the wow factor physical tools, right? He's got better running ability and his arm talent can be off the charts. He can make some unbelievable off platform throws, has a great deep ball. Ewers is good at those things, but Dart's at another level. And if we look at the modern NFL game today, this is my personal belief, is that if you're going to win championships, if you're going to compete to win championships, you need to have one of two things at the quarterback position. One, you need to be very efficient and you need to be incredibly cheap. That's the Brock Purdy model, right? Efficient and cheap. That's hard to do. Number two, you got to be some sort of freakazoid. You got to have some athletic gift that breaks the rules of the defense. That's Mahomes. That's Allen. That's Jalen Hurts. That's Lamar Jackson. That's Joe Burrow, right? You have a different set of skills and talents that no one can handle. You have to be a little bit different than everybody else. I think Jackson Dart has a little bit of that Aaron Rodgers mobility magic. Not nearly at the same level, I don't think. It's a little bit of that to where if he can harness that at the National Football League, he has a chance to be that kind of difference maker. Now, again, he has a lot of flaws. There's a reason, right? He's not projected to go in the first round. He has a lot of flaws. He needs to work on technique, weird offense in college. There's history of Ole Miss quarterbacks getting to the NFL and struggling. Matt Corral is a prominent example of that. But I think if you're the Seattle Seahawks, if you're trying to follow the model of the Kansas City Chiefs that we talk about all the time on this channel, this is what you need to do. Now, maybe they had a meeting with Jackson Dart and it went terrible and like, okay, we don't want this kid. That's fine, right? You have this sit down, you have this discussion to figure out. You take every single draft, you have your starting quarterback going into the year. So you don't need to aggressively talk to every quarterback, right? You got O-line issues, right? Talk to the linemen. You need better tight ends, talk to the tight ends. Makes perfect sense to me. But you need to find your long-term answer at quarterback and just finding one or two guys. You're like, hey, this guy's an interesting prospect. Let's talk to him. That is the smart approach. And Seahawks fans, that's what you should be waiting for to find out. And it doesn't mean anything against Geno Smith in the short term either, right? Now, I do think there is a chance there's some contract negotiation here going on. And Miles, I'll throw this question over to you to maybe wrap this whole thing up. What do you think of Geno Smith seeing the reports of Jackson Dart here? Do you think do you think he knows it's a smokescreen? Do you think he says, well, I'll take a shorter deal, I'll take more money? How do you think this affects the negotiations for an extension? Obviously, Smith is still under contract this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about a guy like Geno Smith, he's been around the block. I mean, he's been through multiple different NFL teams. He's been playing for a long time. He knows what his value is to the Seahawks. Is he's had his best years in Seattle. He's been doing his best ball there. He's been through multiple different contract negotiations. So I think, first of all, if anyone's ever wondered about this, I think we all know it's a business at this point, so you don't have to worry about this. But I don't think it's going to insult Geno Smith for them to be like, all right, we're looking at a quarterback. He knows inevitably, hey, I'm getting older. I'm 34 years old. I'm almost 35, talking about quarterbacks. Not everybody is Tom Brady. Not everybody is Aaron Rodgers, can play till like 40 years old. He's at the last legs of what quarterbacks generally play in the NFL. Getting 35, you're pretty far up there. So I think that he knows where he's at. He knows they're looking for the future. But I think it also signals to Geno Smith, hey, we need to come to the table because they are at the point, I know where I am. If we actually want to get something done, we're going to have to come in together. Like, we're going to have to sit down. I'm going to have to give a little. They're going to have to give a little. We meet in the middle a little. And this is almost like shooting up the bat signal saying, hey, negotiations are happening. We're at the combine. We'll look at a quarterback. We'll get a quarterback. We don't care. Like, there's options out there for us. There's a guy that we like. We want to go through all of this stuff. So I think it's a good move on both parts. I think Geno Smith will take it well, and I think he's been around the block enough times to where he's going to come to the table. And I do think that an extension, a favorable extension, gets done. And I think probably this move right here helps it get done as well.